and Giulio, my question for the church and for the Christians listening to this podcast, what are you for? I mean, it comes back to Jeff Henderson's book. I mean, we've got to meet Jeff Henderson through the Maxwell team. I mean, he asked that incredible question, what are you for? Are you for bringing positive change into the world? Are you for making a difference in the world? Are you for bringing truth into the world, but not just shoving it down people's throats, but truly bringing people into a place where they are in a conversation with you and willing to have a good conversation?
How would you start that though? Would you go up to somebody and you're talking and just, what are you for? Does that come out of the blue?
Well,
hey, because people do speak their opinion. I think once they start their opinion, that is a good question to ask: is what do you believe and what are you for?
Yeah. Well, and I think those
tell me what you think.
Well, and I'm very much about relational evangelism, if we're going to use that word evangelism. I'm not big on that term anymore because it's really relationship and telling God's story. That's what I look at. If we can tell God's story, God does the rest. I mean, if we can tell what he's done throughout history, I mean, I look at it and say, okay, God created the world, created it exactly how he wanted it, perfect, knowing we were going to mess it up. And so Adam and Eve, whether they're real people or representative people, doesn't even matter. People messed it up, but he had a plan before that even happened because he wanted to have a relationship with his creation. So he chose then to walk a path to show people what it took to be in a relationship with him. So the first people get to figure that out through sacrifice. They had everything they did wrong. They had to offer a sacrifice. I mean, Giulio, there are not enough animals in the world for me to sacrifice to cover the things I've done wrong.
Oh my God. Okay. When I read that through Genesis, I was like, I would have trouble catching a lot of pigeons.
Well, that's it. I mean, are there enough pigeons in the world and sheep and goats and cattle and oxen and whatever else you're supposed to sacrifice to even begin to cover what I've done, right? And he showed them that. I mean, he says, here's the law, here's the rules. You break them, here's what you got to do. Even when you don't break them, here's what you got to do because you can't do it. And so he knew he had to show them, though, what he required and show them how far short they were of that standard. And by doing that, he prepares the road for Jesus to come. Because he knew that Jesus was the only one that could fulfill the letter of every single one of those laws. He could do everything that God required in the heart of the law, not just the words of the law. Go into the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus is talking, and all these righteous people are like, "Oh, I've never murdered anybody. I've never committed adultery. I've never, never done this, never done that." I mean, they're going through this list, right? They're rubbing their chest, going, "Okay, I'm good there." And Jesus goes, "Okay, let's talk about murder for a minute. Hey, have you been angry with your brother? Anybody ever felt like you hated your brother? You're just as bad as the murderer." Whoa, time out. What? Okay, sure, you've never physically committed adultery, but how many women you looked at lustfully? Okay, let's not even go there.
Oh, let's not talk about that because listen, I go to the gym and God has to forgive me because today they wear painted on spandex, and you can't help but look. And he says, you're better off gouging your eyes out. I'd be blind and crippled by the time I got done with me. It's not like I mean to have those lustful moments, but my God, you can't help because it is I believe it's the evil part trying to grab your attention to pull you in and commit that, even though I would not because I'm very faithful to my wife.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love her.
And, well, but this is the point, is we can't ever measure up. I mean, if we're just going to try to do the laundry list thing, we can't do it. That's the whole point. I mean, I read a devotional years ago. I mean, I've read dozens of devotionals and, they come and go and a lot of them have some great things. They hit me in the moment, whatever. But one that has stuck with me for over a decade, one day in one book, was from Henry Nouwen. And Henry Nouwen, he started out with a question that blew my mind. When is the last time you thanked God for your sin?
You thanked him?
When is the last time you thanked God for your sin? That was the question.
Thanked him for my sin? Oh my God, I'd be thanking him constantly.
Well, okay.
I don't get that one. Explain that one. What do you mean?
Well, Well, and this is, and like I said, it blew my mind. I'm like, what do you mean? I've never thanked God for my sin. I don't thank God for my sin. I confess my sin, right? Now and then went on for a paragraph to say, I am so grateful that I sin because it reminds me how much I need his grace, how much I need his mercy, how much I need Jesus every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as we
so
think,
what you're saying, you're thanking him because it's a reminder that, because there will always be temptation, no matter what, whether
correct.
it be, you know, picking, eating a piece of fruit in the grocery store without paying for it, like grapes, like my father used to do, or in my case, and people are like, I don't look at the girls or the guys in the gym. I see the girls staring at the guys, taking quick peeks. I see all men peeking at the girls, quick peek, but they all dress and act the way they do because they know they're attracting attention.
Hmm.
Um, but we got to be thankful that we have a God that you're saying is saying, hey, thank you for reminding me that is a sin and I didn't act upon it and I didn't put myself in a situation that could have gone wrong. Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, it's even taking it further than that. It's saying,
Ooh,
God,
take me
I'm
there.
grateful. I am grateful that I have lust in my life. Not because I want to lust, not because I intend to step out of my wife, not because I intend to do anything with that lust, but because I lust, I still know that I need you. Because the day that you and I talk, so let's say we talk again next week, okay, just theoretically, right?
We
And
will.
we come back and we had a perfect week. We did not look at one woman lustfully for the entire week.
I'd be
Okay.
lying to
So,
you.
well, you and I both, right? But here's the thing. If we said that, and even if we had physically somehow accomplished that, we're starting to get to the point where we can say we don't really need God any longer. We're
Yeah.
moving toward that direction.
I get what you're saying. Okay. So, and God wants to be needed.
Correct. He wants us to know that we need him.
Okay. Well, it's funny because I didn't only confess to God, but I went home. I said, honey, because I started in a new gym, and I said,
Yeah.
I have to be honest with you. I said, not that I would ever act upon it. I says, but the way they dress at the gym now and everything is just hanging and painted on. I says, I, I said, you got to forgive me, but I look, and sometimes I catch myself staring, and I don't mean to. I just want to do my workout.
Yeah.
But I come home and crave you. But I had to almost confess to her because it is today's world. No matter where we go, even when we're out at a bar drinking or we're hanging
Sure.
out at someone's house, we're tempted with so many things. Um, don't get me wrong. I used to be attracted to cocaine back in the 80s.
Hmm.
Am I still attracted to it? Probably if it was put in front of me, but I know that I wouldn't do it for many reasons. I don't want
Sure.
to end up how I did back in the 80s by losing everything. I knew it was a part of my life that was filled with lies, deceitfulness, people stealing,
Hmm.
fake friends. So I have to be grateful and thankful for that experience and thankful that God, Jesus, saved me from that experience and now I could help other
Absolutely.
people. So sometimes do you feel we are given those things and live those things so we may help many others?
Absolutely. I mean, I've always said, God, everything that God has happened to you in your life, everything, God can and will use if you allow Him to. Now, with a quick caveat to that, we have to be a wounded healer.
Mm,
Be a wounded
I like
healer.
that wounded healer.
And it's another book by
Yes.
Henry Nouwen. If you haven't ever read The Wounded Healer by Henry Nouwen, it's a great book. But what Nouwen says is we can't heal people if we've not been healed ourselves. And it's thinking about that major cut. So let's take you brought up cocaine. So cocaine addiction, whatever addiction, pornography addiction, you name that addiction, and you can't bring
Food.
healing to food. I was gonna say food, entertainment, media. I mean, heck, all of us got that little device in our pockets. I mean, it doesn't matter
Mhm.
what those things are. We have to be healed from it before we can bring healing to others. And we have to keep in mind that we're a wounded healer because God is the ultimate healer. And even
Yeah.
He,
And it reminds
Jesus,
me of a story that the Dalai Lama, uh, now I don't know what he represents. I think he's the Pope for some kind of religion, right? But
but
a mother went up to the Dalai Lama and said, could you tell my child that eating chocolate is a sin and they shouldn't eat it and so on and so forth? And he says, I can't do that. And she's like, why? He goes, because I love chocolate myself and I'd be lying.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, and that's why, like I said, and I mean, I've heard a similar story told about Gandhi, where he said, "Come back tomorrow," and so the mom brings the kid back tomorrow the next day, and then he says whatever the mom wanted to say, and she goes, "Well, why couldn't you say that yesterday first?"
Oh, wait, you skipped out on that because he said
He
what?
he said, "I have to stop first."
So what? No, you're right. It was Gandhi. It wasn't the Dalai Lama.
Yeah,
Thanks for correcting me, and you did that so
yeah.
gracefully and so nicely. You can correct me straight out. I won't get offended. But I do get my stories mixed up because I'm
No
going to always
problem.
use this excuse, and it's not an excuse actually. Is I do have a short-term memory. I have a long-term memory, but I have short-term memory problems and dyslexia. But if I hear it again, it'll come back. But thank you
Hmm.
for correcting me on that, and you did that.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody, take that example. You see what he just did? Even when somebody's talking about faith, you don't have to say, no, you're wrong, because that's where you turn people off, right?
Hmm.
Pastor, is you turn them
Yep.
off by saying, no, you're wrong. When you should sit there and say, well, that's one way of looking at it. Here's another way of looking at it. Or
Yeah.
here's a story I heard. I love that.
Well, and see, I mean, I love the storying concept of Bible teaching, because what it does is, a lot of missionaries use it. You can find it online if you search out storying, so like story with an ing on it. And what they do is they tell the story and then have the people repeat it back, and they go through a process of thinking through the story. A lot of oral cultures use this process to pass on their traditions, and it's actually scary how well they remember them. But the concept is, you bring people into God's story and you let God start to shape their hearts about who He is, what He stands for, what He believes, which then creates a community around people who've been formed by God, which then ultimately adjusts behavior. And if you go backwards, it never works. I mean, if you start going after behavior, if you start trying to change people's behavior, they just rebel against it. There's no reason, there's no foundation for me to change my behavior. But
Yeah.
what happens is, behaviors create a set of beliefs. Beliefs create a theology. I mean, people who believe that you can't do it, that you need to have this whole laundry list. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Their God is a disciplinary God who punishes you for everything you do wrong, because their theology is shaped on their behavioral expectations.